Welcome to week 2 of Psychology 262, Positive Psychology. I'm Carrie Sanderson. I'm your instructor for this course. Today we are going to be talking about different models of well-being. Last week we talked a little bit about exactly what is positive psychology and the history of it. And today we're going to look more closely at several models of well-being. You had the opportunity to watch some videos and hear from some experts, Dr. Martin Seligman himself, who is considered the founder of positive psychology, Dr. Carol Riff, and an expert from Gallup. So this is what we're going to talk about today. As I mentioned last week, I like to start all of our gatherings together with some sort of practice of mindfulness. Today we're going to do gratitude, which is kind of a form of mindfulness, and we're going to review a little bit of what we talked about last week, and then we're going to look at some details of several well-being models, and then finally a couple of examples so that you can see some validated positive psychology interventions that are around some of these well-being components. But to start with, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of this class. It's really exciting for me to be able to share what I've learned about positive psychology, how to apply it both in my personal life and in my work life to really be transformational. And so it's a really big deal for all of us to be together and get to learn together. I know the field is new and there's always great stuff happening, and I know I'm going to get to learn from you as well. So really thank you for being here. All right, so to reconnect with some of what we talked about last week, you saw a video this week from Dr. Seligman, so you got to hear from him about the PERMA model that he created. But just to remind you, his commitment to well-being for all and for well-being to be taught in schools, very, very important, positive education, and really specifically in community colleges. So he really stands for all that we're learning and all that we're trying to do. Dr. Seligman talked about Dr. Duckworth and her work with grit, and again, just to reconnect some threads for us, her assertion that well-being is universally important, and it's really important for us to teach these in colleges and community colleges to holistically take care of the student and enable you to learn the skills of well-being so that you can use those in your individual lives, but also in your community to make an impact. I wanted to refer to a study by, actually it's his doctoral dissertation, which includes several big studies that Dr. Adler did in his research on positive education, just to ultimately show that teaching well-being increases academic performance. So the combination of well-being skills and academic skills creates not only well-being for the student, but also increases academic achievement. So if anyone is interested in positive education, that's a great research paper to read. And to revisit exactly what positive psychology is, it includes all of these really, really, really interesting topics. And I wish that we could talk about them all at once, but we're going to go through, and you've heard and we'll hear a little bit more about the components of PERMA and some of the other well-being models that are they're all included in some of these pieces, which we'll get to and we'll talk about in much more detail as we go through the course. But just to remind you, positive psychology is the science of a life well lived and aims to understand, research, and cultivate human flourishing. And in doing so, taking a look at exactly what is well-being. So the science of well-being, it would be helpful to know, helpful to define exactly what well-being is. And it's kind of one of those things that you know it when you feel it, but sometimes it's kind of hard to come up with the words to really define it and describe it. So let's start with the CDC's definition of well-being. At a minimum, well-being includes the presence of positive emotions and the absence of negative emotions. So that's really what positive psychology is about when we talked about what it is. It's that focus on cultivating well-being, cultivating positive states. And it's kind of that moving from that place of absence of negative emotions. It also includes satisfaction with life, fulfillment, and positive functioning. So in simple terms, it can be described as judging life positively and feeling good. So that's an interesting definition, because one of the things we think about when we're looking at well-being, how do we cultivate it, where does it come from? When we talk about what it is, we need to think about, is it our well-being in the moment? So is it the state that we're in right now, or is it a measure of a longer term well-being? So kind of looking out over our lives and finding life satisfaction. So you heard Carol Riff talk a little bit about eudaimonic well-being. Well-being itself, and particularly from this definition of judging life positively and feeling good, that includes both. So hedonic well-being being more about happiness and the presence of positive affect. So you're feeling pleasant or you're experiencing pleasure in some way, such as, food, drink, and maybe rock and roll, and the absence of negative affect. So really kind of striving towards feeling good in the present moment. And the sources of those positive feelings tend to come from external sources or resources. And it does tend to be fleeting, so it's not long lasting. And in fact, there's a concept called the hedonic treadmill, which is the fact that we kind of don't really know what makes us happy in the long term. We're not really very good at defining that, and we kind of sometimes struggle with figuring out really what matters. And we're tending to look at the shorter term goals or immediate gratification. And when we get those things, they don't last very long. So you're always kind of striving to get that next sort of fix of happiness. And that's that concept of the treadmill. It's kind of a never-ending search. When you look at eudaimonic well-being, that's more about looking longer term and bigger picture at the meaning of your life. So finding fulfillment and life satisfaction, feeling like even though sometimes some of what you're doing can be hard, that what you're doing is meaningful and you're making an impact. It's about your potential and your ability to grow. So thinking about your personal growth and achieving authenticity and the best self that you can be, and those tend to be internal resources. So well-being really is a combination of both of these things, and we'll take a look as we go through the course at how they support each other. So you heard lots about the model of PERMA well-being, so positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, which this model was developed in around 2011, 2012, has continuously been researched, but it has become apparent, particularly through the pandemic, that there might be a component that's missing. And that's the H. So health, moving, sleeping, eating well, all the things you need to do to take care of yourself physically that actually, kind of through that mind-body connection impact you psychologically. So now there are a number of researchers that are advocates of the PERMA with an H model. EPOC is a model of well-being that is geared towards adolescents, which are ages 10 to 18-ish. It's actually based on the PERMA model, but it's been adjusted to be developmentally appropriate for that age range. That's a time of increased development and kind of finding yourself and who you are and becoming your own person and making decisions that are going to impact the rest of your life. And so PERMA's been tweaked just a little bit to focus more on what's important to that age group and what impacts their well-being the most. So engagement, perseverance, which is that ability to really stick with things. Optimism, the ability to see and believe in good things in your future. Connectedness is huge, particularly for teenagers. And then that kind of happiness, that daily happiness and discovering what contributes to that for you in that age. You heard a little bit from Dr. Riff, and she talked about eudaimonic well-being. And this model, which again is widely accepted, widely used, widely researched, is based specifically on eudaimonic well-being. So that kind of longer term, these are not things that happen in the short term, that happen kind of today in your life. You self-accepted. These are things that we're working on and we're interacting with and we're thinking about building through our entire lives. So self-acceptance, this is something a lot of us have to work on. Personal growth, so really coming into your own, finding your purpose in life that aligns with everything that's important to you and the contribution that you can make in the world. Positive relations, you'll see that's most common through all of the well-being models. Environmental mastery, so kind of your ability to navigate your world. And then finally autonomy, which is your ability to make your own decisions, to kind of function as an individual. The last model of well-being that we're going to talk about today, you saw a really interesting TED Talk by one of the Gallup researchers. Gallup is an old and very, very large company that's a polling company. So during an election time, you'll always see the Gallup polls. They really kind of started as an information gathering organization, but with the huge amount of data that they've been able to collect over decades of time, they've actually been able to develop their own well-being model. Don Clifton, who's one of the founders of Gallup, was a really early proponent of positive psychology, and the organization has a huge research arm. They're based in Omaha, Nebraska, and they have the University of Nebraska at Omaha kind of houses a lot of this research. And so in looking at all of this information over time, Gallup has identified the 5 essential elements of well-being as purpose, which is kind of considered a part of your career, associated with your career path, social, financial, community, and physical. So they were actually the first to kind of identify that physical component as being really, really critical, and have since developed the Gallup National Health and Wellbeing Index. So based on all of this research, they've come up with questions to survey people about their well-being, and do they, through these questions, do they consider themselves to be thriving, to be struggling, or sometimes to both? That's been really common through the pandemic, is that we're kind of okay and kind of not. And so research has been showing that thriving and struggling can actually coexist. So I put a link in for you to take a look at the most recent findings of this index, of this survey, which was released at the end of 2021. And as you can imagine, thriving numbers have decreased, and for lots of really interesting reasons. And we can name the big reasons, but then it's kind of broken down into different demographic groups and who is impacted by what. So it's an interesting way to take these models. This model applies to us as individuals, but also how to take a look at all of the data from all these individuals together and learn some important things around community well-being. So let's take a look just at a few positive interventions. So all of these have been validated, and research has shown that they do have a positive impact on our well-being. Around positive emotion, so we'll do a whole module on positive emotion to get into that a little bit more. But one of the daily practices, kind of hopefully that can become a part of the way that you think, is savoring. And that's the ability to really be present in the moment when something amazing is happening, and pay attention and describe it to yourself, and enable the experience to be elongated so you can enjoy it more. People have a tendency to sort of fall into one of three categories, or maybe one or more. Of pre-savoring is when you're planning something and you're savoring all of that. So thinking about planning a trip and how amazing it's going to be, and that can be a really positive experience. Being able to be in the moment and experience the positive emotion of the trip, making really clear memories and positive associations. And then post, those are the people that are kind of bossing you around to take pictures and may or may not be paying attention to what's actually happening in the moment, but later when they look at the pictures, they're savoring then. So think about where you might fall into that. But to do this activity, think of 3 things that create positive emotions for you, and then combine those into one super intervention. So think about your senses and how you can bring together 3 or more positive experiences into one experience, and then how can you savor that going forward. 3 good things can be associated with positive emotions, or it can be, or probably both, gratitude. So this can also be a gratitude practice that helps you become really aware of the positive things that go on around you and appreciating them. So every night for 1 week, write down 3 things that went well each day and why you think they went well. So this, to take a look at meaning and an activity that you could do around meaning, this is the purpose for learning statement. I think this is really important for college students when you're in college, to know why you're there and be able to remind yourself of that. Sometimes when you're taking a class that maybe seems like, why am I taking this? This doesn't have anything to do with what I want to do. It always does in some way. And so if you can articulate why you're there, why this is meaningful to you, then it helps you kind of align the work that you're doing. When it gets a little bit challenging, you're able to get through that. It helps make you a little bit more resilient. So you will want to complete the following statement: I will become a, and think about the career aspirations that you have, being kind of as specific as possible. So I will become a structural engineer, using my signature strengths of, and fill in what your signature strengths are. For an engineer, let's say my signature strengths are love and perspective and judgment, which is critical thinking. And so I can use all of those things to make people's lives better by building bridges that connect our communities. So having that really specific image of the difference that you're going to make can really help you focus and get through and really kind of savor the anticipation of getting to that place. The last one I want to share is about accomplishment, and this is called the You at Your Best Writing Reflection. This is a little bit similar to the positive introduction that we did, but this is to write about, and this is a little bit more detailed and a little bit more specific. Write about a time when you were at your very best and you accomplished an important goal. So what unique strengths contributed. So this is enabling you again to connect your signature strengths to your accomplishment of this goal. So we're gonna do a module on character strengths, so we'll learn all about that. Why was this goal important to you? So how did it align with your personal values? Did you face any challenges, and how did you get through those? How did you show resiliency? How did you use your strengths to stay motivated? And then when you accomplished the goal, how did you celebrate it? You know, how did you really savor that moment of accomplishing the goal? And so you write this story, write your story of this goal accomplishment, and then reflect on it, read it every day for a week, and kind of reflect on your strengths and your accomplishment. And it can help you kind of practice for future goals. So it'll build hope and optimism in you and help you kind of move forward. So I don't want you to do any of those specific interventions this week. We'll probably do them in future modules. But this week you'll be taking some assessments because about measuring, we're kind of figuring out what well-being is, but how do we measure that? What does research and measurement look like in positive psychology? And so we're going to do some assessments, so you'll have the experience of taking some of those surveys and those questionnaires and get a feel for the questions that are asked to get to bigger concepts. And I think you'll find as we go through this course, one of the things I often reflect on is none of the components that really work are surprising to us. I think for most of us, we're not surprised that it's a positive thing to feel positive emotions. We're not surprised that our relationships are really, really important, that it's important to do things to contribute to other people. But it's a well-researched, rigorously documented, researched, empirically validated field. But the actual interventions and practices that come out of it are really pretty simple. And so a gratitude practice, a meditation, a reflection on your purpose, all of these things are very simple and not really very hard to incorporate into your everyday life, but they build such an incredibly strong foundation for your well-being going forward and your ability to bring it to people around you. So that's it for this week. Always love to hear from you if you have questions or ideas, and I'll outline all the assignments and a little bit of reading for this week in Canvas.